Folks, let's talk about political geography for a moment with a great case study. Now look to the west of where I am. I'm standing in Nebraska and I'm looking into Iowa. Look where the sun is. There's a sunset there. You probably know what I'm going to say next. That, my friends, is Carter Lake, Iowa. I'm looking west from Nebraska into Iowa. Now, most of Iowa is to the east of Nebraska. In fact, it's all to the east of Nebraska except for Carter Lake. Why is that? Because Carter Lake is an abandoned river channel. The Missouri River used to flow right through this lake, and therefore it was set as the state boundary because it's the Missouri River, and that's the boundary of all of the Nebraska-Iowa border. However, we have a dynamic planet, and rivers change course. They meander, for one thing. And this isn't the only meander that is displaced from its original channel. And on down the Mississippi River, for example, there's all kinds of little pieces of Tennessee that are on the west side of the Mississippi, pieces of Arkansas that are on the east side of the Mississippi. So there's all kinds of interesting things like this. But here we've got Carter Lake, Iowa. And Carter Lake is the town in the middle, I'll show you a map in a minute, of this now abandoned river channel, now forming an Oxbow Lake. An Oxbow Lake, O-X-B-O-W, Oxbow Lake. So Carter Lake, Iowa is on the west side of the Missouri River. It's the only piece of Iowa that's on the west side of the Missouri River. So I'm going to actually walk into Carter Lake here in a moment, but I wanted to give you some context. Political geography, it's interesting because when boundaries are drawn on maps, physical features are oftentimes used, not always. Sometimes latitude and longitude lines are drawn, sometimes other boundaries are used, other features are used. But when physical features are used, you think they'd be pretty much set, like a mountain ridge or a river. Mountain ridges have interesting histories too. They tend to be a little more stable, but then it's where is exactly the top of the ridge? So that can be complicated too. When you dig into geography, it gets more and more complicated. That's what's wonderful and glorious about geography. There's so much to discover. You keep digging deeper, and there's treasures. There's lines of inquiry. That's why I'm so keen on teaching geography in lots of different subjects: mathematics, history, economics, language arts. There's all kinds of geographical elements that you can teach in those other subjects, but more about that in other videos. Let's get back to political geography and Carter Lake, Iowa. I'll join you in a moment.
And in case you're wondering why I have my luggage with me, strapped on my front and back, yes, I did walk from the airport through Carter Lake into downtown Omaha. It took me about 90 minutes.
The state line runs off of the Oxbow Lake right up here, past that big cottonwood, and right over here to this lake hydro feature, and right down here in the grass to that sign marking the park boundary up ahead. So on the right side here, that's Iowa, and that's Nebraska. So the state line actually runs right along this street for several blocks, and then the state line goes over to the current channel of the Missouri River. That is
time 30 minutes, distance 1.49 miles, average pace 20 minutes, 0.5 seconds per mile.
Passions. The Omaha airport is one of the few airports that you can walk from and to. Well, we'll see. I'm not quite done yet, so I'll give you a status report on that. All right. Talk to you in a moment. State line running right down through here and right through this sign out to this street. So I'm leaving Nebraska and now in Iowa. There's no marker on the state line right here, but as I'm always advocating, check multiple sources, in this case boundaries, and now I'm firmly in the great state of Iowa, specifically the town of Carter Lake, Iowa.
Here you can see the great state of Iowa on a map. We're zooming now to Carter Lake. You can see the horseshoe shape of the lake. You can see the airfield, which is the OMA airport, where I flew in on, walking southwest along that road and then across on Locust Street, as you can see right there. You can see the boundary of the state line connecting to the Missouri River. Wonderful. Hence, I flew into Nebraska, walked across a piece of Iowa, and back into Nebraska. The city limits sign here is rather obscured, but there it is. Here is the city offices.
Okay, I'm in Carter Lake. There is the USA flag and the flag of the great state of Iowa right there. Carter Lake, Iowa. Okay, I've got a long way to go. I better keep moving. Keep moving. Some of the streets and homes here in Carter Lake, Iowa. Get out there and explore. Now I'm walking along a commercial street here, but most of Carter Lake is actually residential. There's also a golf course right over there to the north of me. And wouldn't it be interesting if you sliced the ball on that tee over there, you could hit it into Nebraska. What a concept, hitting your ball into a different state. All right, I'm getting really close to the western side of Carter Lake, so we'll be crossing into Nebraska here at any moment. I'll have to check the map to verify.
I have now arrived at the city limits and the state line of Carter Lake and Nebraska, Iowa.
After about 20 minutes or so, maybe 25 minutes on Locust Street, we've come...
Time 50 minutes. Distance 2.58 miles.
This sign is very geographical as well, because you can see the Oxbow and the Oxbow Lake boundary forming the north, the east, and the west side of Carter Lake, the city of Carter Lake. And you can see that the other part of the boundary is actually on city streets and in the physical environment that's not part of the Oxbow Lake. So we've just crossed from Iowa into Nebraska, and it's a beautiful thing. Geography rules. Here is where my tenacity about walking is questionable, because the sidewalk has ended. Ah, there it is again. But we've got some debris. We need to be careful about broken pavement. We've just gone into Nebraska now. We're still on Locust. And just think of all that Nebraska terrain that's directly ahead of me, all the way to the Sandhills, to Scotts Bluff, and to the Wyoming border. Wow, that's hundreds of miles of Nebraska right in front of me. It's a beautiful thing. Okay, we are climbing out of the floodplain. You can see the natural levees here. This property is actually for sale. You buy yourself a piece of that levee. Climbing the hill, going up the levee in Nebraska. There's not a single business on this street that is still in business. Urban decline and decay. It's a sad thing. It really is.
And in geography, we discuss economic changes and its ramifications in the physical environment. Printing companies no longer needed as they once were. But here's some thriving industry. Now I am walking due south and approaching the core downtown Omaha, Nebraska area. I discovered this wonderful bakery. Look at this, cakes, what a great sign. There are people that look at signs on the landscape as well.
Walking under freeways. Get out there and explore the world.
Thank you for joining me on this geographical journey. We've talked about the physical environment, the human-built environment, political borders, river meanders, and much more. Get out there and explore and ask questions and observe.